What is up, everybody? It is your homegirl, KDG, and wow, it's kind of been a while, hasn't it? Yeah, I'm really sorry. I was about to publish an episode, and then something horrible happened, and so now I'm kind of changing direction. A friend of mine passed away, and so it's just been a grieving period for me and some friends. And yeah, it's just been really tough. I was actually going to do an episode about love and attachment, and I had everything planned out, and all I needed to do was record, and it was going to be released like probably a week after Valentine's Day. And then this happened. And so I've just taken some more time off. I even took time off from school, and I'm just now starting to get back into it. So, today, we're going to talk about grief, because why not? I am your host, Kitty Gonzalez, and you're listening to What the Psychology. Alright, so before I really go into this, I kind of just want to rant a little bit because I'm kind of mad in a sense. Because all of you know that I am hardworking, I'm a good student, and despite my own challenges and even with my own mental illnesses, I never ask for anything. I never ask for help. I never express when I'm having a bad day mentally to any of my professors. I just kind of feel like it's private. And I somehow work through it. But this became a time where it's like I'm grieving and there's no way I can work through all my feelings and be able to focus and be able to take notes and really pay attention and give quality work that I normally do. So I reached out to all of my professors. I did have a few assignments that were due, like that weekend that I found out what happened. They had to pull my friend from life support. And so I just let all my instructors know. 5 out of the 6 of the professors, because you guys know I'm an overachiever, I'm taking 6 classes right now, and I will be graduating soon. I also have like all A's and 1 B, like my whole collegiate career. And so I'm just kind of mad because 5 out of 6 of the professors were amazing. And they're like, it's a hard time. We will extend the assignments for you. Just let us know when you're ready, and we'll work out a schedule. Let me know if you need anything. Like, they were all there encouraging me, willing to help, and great. I did have one professor who was like, well, the one assignment, I will extend it a couple of days. And, like, that was the whole week that I took off. And it just, I don't know, maybe I should have communicated better or more. But honestly, I didn't even really look at my laptop. Like, I took some notes for class, but I just wasn't really in it. And I sent out an email to all my professors saying, hey, I took the week off. I'm feeling much better. I'm ready to get back to it. And the one that gave me a 2-day extension was like, well, you missed it, and you have 2 things that are due today, and we didn't discuss those. And so here I am having to scramble to take, like, a quiz and then an exam, and I didn't do the best. I mean, I did average, and because I missed the assignment, right now my grade is like a C or a B, and it's gonna drop down to like an F because I missed that assignment. And I don't know, there's just been no grace really shown to me to be like, well, okay, I understand, and yeah, I can extend it. But no, it's just been so, like, I don't know. It's just frustrating because if it was me as a professor, like, life happens. I'm sorry, I cannot control that my friend passed away and that I am highly affected to that and highly sensitive to that. But, it's whatever. I know that we have student evaluations at the end of the semester. We also get 10 extra credit points for that particular class for doing that. So it's going to be kind of a big, middle finger when I put not the best comments about said professor because, yeah, of how I've been treated during this hard time. So, whatever, I'm just gonna have to work extra harder to maintain my GPA, and that's probably what makes me the most mad is like every day you miss an assignment in that class, like your grade reduces 20%. So it's like, well, by all the days that have passed, I'm gonna get a zero anyway. So what's the point of me even making up that? Like, there's literally no point. I don't know. Anyways, I've never really came across an instructor that's like that, which I guess is a good thing because I've been in college for like almost 2 years and I've had great professors. So I guess it's good if you get one bad out of all the good ones that you have. And so yeah, just don't be that one. just don't. So moving on. What else has been new? I really don't know because it's been so long since I put out an episode. Things with school have gotten busy. I'm doing a lot of other volunteer things and life is just crazy. It's crazy right now. So I'll try to make it up to you guys. I'm trying to get on a better schedule. I know I've probably said that like 100 million times, but I mean it. I will do my best. And so let's jump into grief because I feel like this is so relevant for me right now. And some of the friends that I do have that do listen, they know exactly what I'm talking about because they're going through it as well. So today's going to be kind of informative, but I feel like I'm also going to just throw out a lot of things that personally I kind of learned through this experience and, well, many other deaths that I have experienced because, I mean, there's been a lot in my life. Like, I think there's been almost one every year the last 7 years, or not even one. Sometimes it's like 2 or 3 people within such a short amount of time. So I have a lot of experience with grief. And I do want to start out by saying that there is no really like trajectory of grief. There's no timetable for feelings of pain after a loss. There is not a quote right way to react. Everyone reacts and processes grief differently. Some people, they just have to go back to work right away, and that may seem off, but it could be them denying it and getting back into work to distract them. We see this a lot in like TV and stuff, and I don't mean like reality TV and like TV shows. I mean like when a child, for instance, goes missing or is found dead, we're always like, oh, why are the parents acting like that? And we place so much on like how the parents are, or even like in a court of law, but they're, especially in a court of law, they're supposed to not react or they can be thrown out of court or be put in contempt or whatever. So and in other places, for them to not be grieving all over the microphone, they have to get out their message. And it's just it's really hard to digest how someone is feeling. Because on the outside, they may be looking like they're completely fine, but on the inside, who knows? We may know, like, we probably don't know, but they probably go to bed every night crying themselves to sleep when they just act differently in public. So, I do want to start off by saying that. And when it comes to grief, there are a lot of different feelings that associate with grief. There can be guilt, there can be confusion, even in the sense of if it's like a relationship with someone that was very difficult, like if you had a estranged parent or something, that can be very, very different. So even just the fact that society kind of views as misperception that more, quote, more grief, or like the outer appearance of grief, is better, or that there's a proper way to grieve, that can make the process more difficult. It's kind of like people that start to chuckle or they laugh anxiously in a very uncomfortable situation, but really it's just the way they react. Everyone reacts to things differently, and that's perfectly fine. We need to accept that, and I mean, we need to make it normal to where it's not in a box. Like, things are just not put in a box. So how many of you out there grieve differently? Because, well, I feel like I do in a sense where I keep my feelings to myself a lot, and if other people are around me crying, sometimes I might shed a tear or two, like if it's like mourning the loss of a loved one. But yeah, and I feel like that's not normal or what society deems as normal. I'm more like numb, straight faced, there for others, trying to support everyone else and make sure they're fine. And then later I go cry. And yeah, I feel like I process it differently and I show it differently than other people do as well. So maybe some of you guys can relate to me on that. Alright, so a lot of us know like there are quote unquote what we say stages of grief. A lot of people are very familiar with this, that there's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And a lot of people think that it's in that order, and it's not actually. Many people do expect to experience that, and a lot of people do not progress through those stages. Sometimes they may skip a stage or experience some of them or experience one of them or two of them. And what really got the influence of the stages of grief was actually a book. And it was published in 1969 by a psychiatrist, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and it was a book called On Death and Dying. Now that was late 60s, early 70s, and a lot has changed, and that must have been a lot of progress for that time, but now we understand that it is a little bit different. So what we know now is that to reach an acceptance after a loss, grief can be highly individualized and very unpredictable. Now, one of the stages is depression. There is a very big difference between grief and depression. There's confusions because a lot of the symptoms, they do overlap, like grief and depression. There are overlapping symptoms because there's sadness, often the loss of capacity for pleasure, probably insomnia, loss of appetite, or taking care of yourself. But there are some differences. Symptoms of grief, they tend to lessen over time, even though they may be temporarily reactivated, like on anniversaries or when there's a reminder of that person who was lost. Sometimes we do have negative thoughts in grief, like life is unfair and I'll never get over this. That is actually very normal in the grieving process. Don't think that it's not, because it's very normal. If you remember back in the mood disorder episode, I talked about depression. And if you remember what I stated about the symptoms and everything else that goes with depression, depression is pretty persistent over time. And depending on if it's like major depressive disorder or persistent depressive disorder, it is diagnosed over a certain watchful point of time. Now, this isn't saying that depression can also get better, because it can, depending on the situation and therapy and a bunch of different things. But usually grief, you can process it and you, in a sense, go back to normal. I wouldn't say, it's kind of hard to say normal, but you don't get back there immediately. So hopefully that understanding is better. Alright, so we're going to talk about why we mourn. Why do we grieve in the first place? Well, first of all, it's very normal, because all of a sudden that person that has been there, been part of your life, they're gone and they're not there anymore. But you also have to remember that it's not just like child, parent, best friend, sibling. We also grieve over other things. We grieve over a treasured pet, who in my instance is part of the family. You guys know the chief editor. Some grieve over a job or other important roles in life. If you get divorced or married. No, that was a complete joke. Don't laugh at that. And sometimes it's like you might grieve over a home or other emotionally significant possessions. If you've lived in a home all your life and now you have to sell or something or downsize, that can be really hard. You have all memories attached to that home. So it's not just losing a person, but
what is crazy
is that we don't really look at it that way. We don't really acknowledge that those are also things that we can grieve over. The pain is compounded by the feeling that one has not been given, quote, permission to experience it. However, the framework of mourning can help an individual work through those moments too. Like, it's not just about losing people, it can be about other things. So that's also important to note. Of course, it may not be as significant as losing a person. That's not what I'm saying. But the fact that we don't acknowledge the pain of losing other things too, and we're not really given permission to experience grief over those things, is also disingenuous. So, we need to kind of change or shift our perspective there too. So, how can you support someone who is grieving, or if you're grieving yourself? Because we know that grief is experienced in many ways, those that are supporting a friend or a loved one in a time of grieving, follow the person's lead. Do not judge whether they seem to be grieving properly or whatever your definition of grieving is, or if they're grieving too short or too long. It's very unhelpful, especially to encourage the pursuit of what we call closure. Some better ways to help is offer practical help and also an acknowledgement of a loss or both positive actions. Okay? So many mourners, they want those around them to listen, ask questions, and share memories, confirming the depth and validity of the griever's feelings and to help them heal. Now, I have heard people say the most outrageous things to people that are grieving.
Like, oh my goodness.
Some people will make snide comments about the person that is grieving, or they will make it about themselves, and sometimes things we would normally say can be very insensitive to the subject of someone that is grieving, so we need to be very careful about what we say, how we say it. Because that person is in a very emotionally vulnerable place. I wouldn't even say vulnerable, I would say sensitive, and we just gotta be mindful of that. Something else I really, really want to talk about, because I experienced death at a young age, and I feel like we don't really teach children how to grieve. And I don't want to say grieve properly, because what I just said was there's no proper way. But teaching your children how to express themselves and for them to cope with a loss. And it really depends on their age, how close they felt to the person who passed away, and the support they received. And a big problem that I see is that a lot of parents, they think, oh, not even parents, but it could be older siblings as well. A lot of them think that, oh, I have to be strong for my kids, or I have to be strong for my siblings. And there's a way to do that and still show them how to cope with their feelings as well. I feel like we get so tied up in I have to be strong where we can't be emotionally vulnerable even to our kids. And that can be a very dangerous place to be, because we gotta teach them how to cope with their feelings as well. And if we don't, typically you see kids have or start to have behavioral issues because they just don't know how to express themselves. So, and in some cases, they will have issues with self-regulation, regulating their own emotions, which lead to that. Okay, so while we are on the subject matter of this, I want to play a quick audio clip from the movie The Pacifier, which has Vin Diesel in it. And if you haven't seen the movie, go see it. It's great. It's pretty much about a Navy SEAL who is assigned to a family to look after, and they just lost their father husband. And he's pretty much there to protect them because I guess the father was involved in some secret squirrely stuff. And there's a part in the movie, which I'm going to play, where he confronts the oldest daughter because she is just really upset. He pretty much tells her once he finds out that it's about her dad, and like that's why she's upset. He pretty much says that she shouldn't be holding all her emotions in. So let me play that for you real quick.
Zoe, a rookie sniper could drop you like it did.
Good.
Good? Alright, this is about Scott again.
No, it's not. You're right about him. I'm a stupid guy.
So what's wrong?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. You know, when I was little, my mom left. My dad was a spec ops soldier like me. When I was 8, he shipped me off to military school. I guess he liked being a soldier more than he liked being a dad. One day I get a letter. No more dad.
It's terrible.
The thing is, for a long time I thought that if I talked about it, I was letting him down. Like I was supposed to be brave or something.
Yeah.
It's okay to talk about your dad, Zoe.
I do miss him. So much. I don't know, I want to be strong for Lulu and Tyler and Peter and Seth and my mom.
It's such a big burden to carry.
You know.
It's okay to miss your dad.
So, what are some things that parents can do to help a child who has lost a loved one? Well, one of the first things is to use simple words to talk about death. What is crazy is that in one of my classes, we have kind of learned different ways we can do this with kids. And if you think about it, kids are already surrounded by death. And it's before they even lose a loved one. Well, sometimes they lose a pet before they even lose a loved one. And then there's also songs and books that have themes of death in them. Well, the Little Red Riding Hood, Hansel and Gretel, those have themes of death in it. Also songs like Ring Around the Rosie, that's about the plague. Rockabye Baby has some very eerie themes to it as well. And probably even some Disney movies have death in them. Most recently, Coco, that's all about Dia de los Muertos, so Day of the Dead. So it's all about dying and how on that day that culture celebrates death and the story behind the day. So those themes are already being introduced to them. It's not like they don't know about it. And we think we're protecting them by holding back. And I think there's a way to do that without throwing out too much to them, but also not withholding. So you gotta have that healthy balance. Another thing to do is listen and comfort. Every child, just like every adult, they react in their own way when they learn that a loved one has died. Some kids cry, some ask questions, others seem not to react at all, and it's okay. So you want to make sure you probably stay with your child, give them hugs, comfort, answer their questions, or even just be together for a few moments. And it is, like I said, it's completely okay for them to see your sadness and your tears. That might actually help them grieve as well. Because remember, parents, you are the example to your kids. They look up to you. You are their heroes. What do most kids say when what they want to be when they grow up, or if you ask a kid who their hero is? Most times they'll say like their mom, their dad, or they'll pick a job that associates with their parents. Not always, but sometimes. Or they'll talk about their parents in very positive ways. They look up to you. And another little note for parents is, you guys, I've been around a lot of parents. Obviously, I'm not one. But a lot of parents feel like they are inadequate. And let me tell you, if you feel like you're inadequate, that means that you care. That means you care about your kids, you care about how you are doing, More times than not, you're doing fine. So I'm just gonna throw that out there. I can't really connect on the level of being a parent, but that's what I've learned from other people, and I'm like,
No, look at your kids. They're wonderful. Like,
I know we get in our own heads sometimes, but if you're a parent, you're probably doing great. So, unless you just completely, like, abandoning your kids and not care about how they grow up or anything, you probably wouldn't even be asking the question. So, and hopefully that reassures you. Okay, back to children and back to grieving. Something else you can do is put feelings into words. You can ask your kids to say what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and you can even label some of your own feelings. And you don't want to make them too complicated emotions because kids, they're not going to know like every single emotion that we now associate with. They're going to know sad, happy, angry, upset, like, but when it comes to like other complicated emotions, they may not fully understand. So if you share your feelings, it encourages them and can make it easier for them to share theirs. Even if you say something like, I know you're very sad, I'm sad too. We both loved so and so very much and they loved us too. And then they can kind of grasp the thought of, okay, it's perfectly fine for me to experience sadness. Tell your child what to expect. If the death of a loved one means that there will be changes in their life or their routine, you need to explain to them what will happen because it helps your child feel prepared. So, for example, like you could say your aunt will pick you up from school just like grandma used to, right? Or I need to stay with grandpa for a few days. That means you and dad will be home taking care of each other. But I'll talk to you every day and I'll be back on Sunday. So you still want to explain things to them so they're not like, oh, what's going on? Even if it's something simple like that so they can understand more of what is going on and how they can be prepared. Next, also like explain events that will happen. So allow your children to join in rituals like viewings, funerals, memorial services. And make sure you tell them ahead of time what will happen. So you could say, like, lots of people who loved the person that you lost will be there. We'll sing, we'll pray, we'll talk about their life. People might cry and hug. They might say, I'm sorry for your loss. And we'll say, thank you, thanks for coming. Or you can stay near me and hold my hand if you want. You might even need to explain a burial or a cremation. So if you say like after the funeral there's a burial at the cemetery, the person is in a casket and they get buried in the ground with a very special ceremony. This can feel like a sad goodbye and people might cry. And then you can share your own family's beliefs about what happens to a person when they die. That's a perfect opportunity. You could even talk about like what happens after the service. Like, we're going to go eat food together, we're going to laugh, talk, and hug more. We're going to talk about that person even more and share more memories, and it will help us feel better. So even just simply explaining things like that in terms that your child can understand can also help them in the process of grieving and maybe even see closure in a sense. What's next is give your child a role. So even having a small active role lets kids feel part of things and it will help them cope. So you might invite your child to read a poem, pick a song to be played, or gather some photos to display or make something. Let the kids decide if they want to take part and if they want to, how. They may not want to take part, but it's something to offer. Next is help your child remember the person. So in the days and weeks ahead, encourage your child to draw pictures or write down stories of their loved one. Do not avoid talking about the person who died, because that can really confuse things even more. Sharing happy memories together will actually help grieve and will actually help process that loss. What else? There's a couple more things that you can do. Reassure your child and be comforting to them. Help them feel better. So they need to feel the sad feelings but not dwell on them. So even after you talk to them and listen for a little bit, then you can shift to another topic that will make them feel better, or you can make art, cook, or go somewhere together. Also, give your child time to heal from the loss. Because, like I said in the beginning, it's a process that happens over time. You want to make sure that you are there for your children, despite how hard that can be. You want to make sure they are taken care of. And remember this, healing does not mean forgetting about your loved one. It really means remembering the person with love. Memories, they can stir good feelings, and they can support us as we enjoy life. Also, another big thing is take care of yourself as well. A lot of parents, like I said, they are so focused on remaining strong for their kids. The kids need to process it as well. It may be very different. And a key aspect of that is you grieving as well in a healthy way. You taking care of yourself as well, surrounding yourself with people that are going to help. I don't know what else to say about that. I mean, that's pretty much don't ignore your own grief because they will imitate the grieving behavior of their parents. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse when I say that. Another thing is stick to routines because that's the normal for children. That's their normalcy. And that can kind of help them process as well. If they need time alone. Oh, if you as a parent need some time alone to grieve yourself, you can always find friends or relatives who can help keep the child's life as normal as possible. Because it is important to grieve over the death of a loved one, but it is also important for a child to understand that life does go on. Other situations they can help in the grieving process. So, the death of the pet, usually, that's their first exposure. I know for me, I think I was 4 or 5 when our very first pet died. And, I don't really remember grieving, but I remember we got another dog who looked very different from him. And so we understood that the other dog is gone, and then now we have a new dog, and the old dog is in doggy heaven. So, usually that is the first exposure with kids grieving because children, they do build strong bonds with their pets. Even as adults, we do as well. So do not minimize the importance or even immediately replace a dead pet with a new animal. It's not something you want to do right away. Instead, give the time for your child to grieve their pet. And honestly, it's a great way to teach them how to grieve and for you to be there to be emotionally supportive of them. I know we also had hamsters growing up and they don't last a long time. But even when we had dogs, when we had our first dog that did die, we had a little memorial service for him. Like we put him in a box, wrapped him in a blanket, and we buried him in the backyard, and we all shared a few words as we were burying him. And we all put dirt on the box, and I know as kids we would draw pictures of him and things like that. And I think our parents did a pretty good job, at least I know with that, how to grieve. But in a sense, it's also, it's a pet. You've only known that pet for 5 years of your life, and you didn't know them that well. Or some parents view it like that. But you have to remember, it's a great opportunity to teach them about death, and as morbid as that sounds and how scary as that sounds, if they can build that healthy relationship with grieving, then you have to know that they're going to experience death throughout their lives. It may be their grandparent next, it may be their great-grandparent. And so, grieving a pet, if that is the first thing they experience, it's a good opportunity to prepare them when someone they've had a lot longer in their life passes away. Sometimes, like I said earlier, questions come along with these things from kids. If a grandparent passes away, kids might say, "Mom, will you be next?" Or, it can be crazy, the questions they come up with, but it's good for you to reassure them that, I'm your mom, I'll probably live for a long time, and grandma, grandpa, they lived a long, happy life. And so, I don't know what else I'm trying to say with that, but another big thing to do is if all this grieving, especially with your children, and also for yourself and for your loved ones, If they are unable to cope with grief, they may have something called adjustment disorder. And it's a very serious and distressing condition that some children do develop after experiencing a painful or disruptive event. It doesn't necessarily have to be a death of someone else, but it is definitely something that can develop. And if you feel like your child isn't recovering or not grieving in a healthy way, or you are just having a hard time helping them cope, taking them to a doctor, like consulting with their pediatrician would be a good way to start. And they might need a little bit more therapy to help them with that, and that's completely fine. That's completely normal as well. And even sometimes as parents, I feel like you guys, through the grieving process, especially if it's someone really close to you personally, it's really hard for you to juggle everything that's expected of you from day-to-day life, and then you're grieving, and then you have your children to take care of. Make sure you get help for yourself too if you need it. There's nothing wrong with therapy. Nothing wrong. We're trying to change the stigma here. Nothing wrong with it. You go if your children are experiencing more issues, take them. Sometimes it just takes a non-biased person or someone that's not part of the situation to help them through those things, and even to help you through those things as well. So yeah, I think that's all I got. I tried to give y'all some information. I tried to share my own story. Like I said, I have experienced a lot of death. The sad thing is, the most recent one was a guy that I grew up with, went to high school with, graduated together, and same age. So it's just really hard to see someone young die and leave behind a family, and it's just really tough. It's just really tough. I don't know what else to say about it. Unfortunately, grieving, we all go through it. We're all going to go through it eventually. The steps we can take early in life, and if we have children early in their lives and teach them how to do so, is going to help them develop, help them grieve for future times as well. So don't be strong. You can be strong, but be strong in other ways too.
With that,
I'm your host, Katie Gonzalez, and you've been listening to What the Psychology.
stay psyched, y'all.